unfiltered opinions.
Sometimes you have ideas and you're not quite sure why.
As you secure the bag.
Sometimes you meet people and realize there's probably a reason why you stayed in touch.
Just listen.
Sometimes all the pieces just come together by themselves.
I'm Jimmy Moyaha.
And I'm Simon Brown.
Welcome to Insider Exchange.
Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Insider Exchange, live streamed for you every Monday morning with the rest of the show to drop later in the week. We hope you've missed us. We're glad to be back. We've missed you guys too. It seems we can't catch a break. We go on holiday for a week and the world falls apart. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at in Market Matters today. We're going to be taking a look at the war that's been escalating in the Middle East, the impact that that's going to have on global markets, and we're going to be trying to make sense of the market movements that we have been seeing thus far. Then we're going to look at something quite interesting on the deep dive side of things. After looking at war, one must look at puppies. We're going to be taking a look at pet insurance, so dig into that conversation as well. And we're going to wrap things up in our investor insights with some more insights around what we could potentially be interested in seeing play out in the markets in the rest of the coming weeks, rather, and we're adding another stock to our wall. Stick around for that so you can figure out what that is. And of course, there's an unfiltered opinion at the end of the show. Before we get into the one conversation that's going to be keeping us busy for quite some time, Si, I know next week? Next weekend, the Durban July. I know you're going. I know you've got an invitation to go. But do you have a mode of transport to get you there in style? Because there's a company out there that will let you hire a white Rolls-Royce Ghost for 2 hours at 14,500 rand.
And to be clear, it's Durban. It takes about 5 minutes. Like, Durban is not a big place. Like, there's traffic. But I mean, you travel for 2 hours in Durban, you've left the province.
Yeah, but you can do it.
You've missed the Durban July. You are now in the Free State.
You can do it in a white Rolls-Royce Ghost. Or you can have a slightly more affordable Porsche 911 convertible at 9,500 rand. See, that's modest.
That tickles me. Okay, they got any Jaguars?
It doesn't look like it from what I'm seeing, but I'm sure we can phone them and arrange an E-Type for you.
Ooh, hang on.
Hopefully not one that's on like a flatbed or something, like one that actually moves.
14,000 for 2 hours of a white Ghost Rolls Royce. Does it come with driver? It must, in a cooler box.
Potentially. Let's have a look and see.
Huh, that's not bad.
You might get to drive yourself.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Mind you, 2 hours, it's not driving me home, so that's fun.
It's a supercar drop-off. So, I assume someone's dropping you off. You are not driving yourself.
Sweet.
I don't know if I would pay 9,500 rand to have somebody else drive me. I want to do the driving myself.
Well, in the case of a 911, you'd absolutely want to drive it yourself. Trust me, I drove one once and it was still sticks in my head. Man, that thing was stuck to the road. It was like, there's a gap, it's big enough for the car, zoop, you're in the gap. But the Rolls Royce, I'm not sure I want to drive that. I think I need to be driven, sit in the back.
I think if it's a Wraith, I might consider it. But generally, yeah, you're right. There are other luxury vehicles out there. There are nice fancy vehicles you can look at if you're interested in it. But is it worth it? I mean, I suppose
no, because
none of the Durban July is worth it if you really think about it. But
correcto, Mundo. And to be clear, it would be to impress my wife, and I think she's already.
She's
married
stuck with
me,
you, right? I mean, and if she hasn't been impressed thus far, it might be a bit too late.
Yeah. But I don't know how I'm getting there and back. So I mean, sure.
If anybody wants to pick us up for the Durban July, let us know. Who knows, right?
Are you coming too?
I don't know. We'll figure that out.
Okay.
But let's move on to Market Matters. Let's get into the only real conversation that is happening globally in financial markets at the moment, and that is the conversation around the war. The Israel-Iran war that has been escalating gradually just took a serious turn over the weekend, and I suppose that's as best I can put it from a summary perspective. But let's get into that side. Let's get into just what this means, because unlike other wars in the past, this one markets seem to be more prepared for. We're seeing things play out the way they should. There's a lot of kind of certainty around, okay, if this is the direction the war proceeds in, then this is the rest of what's going to happen.
I think so. And obviously the key thing is oil, and it's a little bit higher, but not a heck of a lot. To be clear, it's well off the $60 we were at just a little while ago. And in fact,
we almost touched $80 on the futures. We touched $80 in opening session, or the opening of Asian session. So we're currently around the 76, 77 odd dollar a barrel level, which is where we closed out Friday anyway. So that entire gap up has just kind of come back. Yeah, it's come right back.
I think it's the world saying two things. One is, notwithstanding Trump promised us 2 weeks, it's not the biggest surprise, perhaps, that Trump is misinformed, is lies, can't count, something like that. But I think more importantly is, certainly it's a big deal, but how big is it really for oil? Are they going to close the Straits of Hormuz? Now, apparently, the Iranian parliament has voted to, but you close that, man, you're going to have, war tank, what are those things? Aircraft carriers. America's going to reopen it in minutes and take it. So I can't help thinking that the threat to close it is just that, because the threat sends oil higher. Everyone likes that. You get more bang for your buck in terms of oil, but you don't actually close it because, sure, that would send oil to 100, but it would also get a response on the closure of the Straits.
So the interesting thing about the Strait is I've been keeping an eye on that and just getting different perspectives.
But you were going to say you'd visited it. So I'm like, hey.
No. And I don't think I will be visiting it anytime soon, at least until the war has settled down, right? So I think what I've been keeping an eye on is the impact that then has on global supply, right? So supply chain, we know that that's a big factor, right? We know that Iran is one of the big producers from an oil perspective. We know that areas like the Strait of Hormuz, as well as the Suez Canal, are critical to the movement of ships throughout the world. What's interesting about the Strait of Hormuz is there's some reports that say that the bulk of that supply goes towards China, which then suggests that America actually does want Iran to close that, because if you're crippling your biggest trading partner in terms of oil supply, then that might put you in a better position from a trade war perspective, right? But the other side of that is you could just be pushing them further into the arms of Russia, which is already a thing at the moment,
and doesn't send their oil through. And I'm checking Vessel Finder, which I have been since I woke up yesterday, and that strait is no less busy than it ever was. No, absolutely. So then you force China into buying more Russian oil, which
doesn't really impact Russia. It impacts China in the short term, but not in the long term.
No, but would make it a much higher price, which Russia would really, really like.
Which would still, again, benefit China in the long term because of the BRICS bloc.
Yes.
Now, the other side of the coin is Europe. Europe also gets some of its supply through the Strait of Hormuz, and that would then necessitate that they would have to get their gas or their oil requirements from the US, which increases their dependency to the US, which is again something that benefits the US. So the closure of that strait seemingly, one, will drive oil prices higher in the short term, but might actually strategically benefit someone like the US. And perhaps that could be their involvement in wanting to get involved in the war. We know for a fact there's different conversations, different viewpoints around whether or not the US is a proxy for Israel or vice versa, those sorts of conversations. But at the end of the day, when we look at the global trade landscape and the geopolitical shifts, it's so important to start to look at this from a broader sense, not from the sense of, oh, this is going to impact one country, because it doesn't anymore.
No, 100%. I mean, it'll impact us, right? Oil at 100 is going to hurt us and might put interest rates
Oil
higher.
at 80 is going to hurt us.
Yeah, right now we are being hurt. Petrol prices are going up in July, and that's not going to be fun, and we'll see what happens for the rest of the year. But to your point, and it's the interconnectedness of everything, right? Dirk Gently told us about this a long time ago. And yes, there will be winners and losers, and China could be a short-term loser. Russia could be a short-term winner. The short answer is it's weird because, so firstly, one of Trump's thing was to get oil down. Part of his plan is to get gas fees down, et cetera, et cetera. And that was kind of working with the help of Saudi Arabia, OPEC. Plus, of course, the challenge is Saudi Arabia, who can pump more, sends a lot of their oil through that strait. So they can pump what they but they can't send it.
So the other thing that Saudi Arabia has to its advantage is I think they realized that this concentration risk was a problem because they started building a pipeline that runs out to the other end of Saudi Arabia that doesn't go through the Strait of Hormuz, which would then mean that they can still maintain global supply at reasonable levels, right? And I think what's very clear about this is there will not be a shortage of oil.
No.
It's going to be
a price.
That's it. It's going to be about maintaining the price and how long the oil takes to get to you and all of that. And we've seen in the past, we saw in the pandemic, guys like China had stockpiled oil reserves and they started unloading strategic reserves to keep their own economies going. And I saw something quite interesting from Xi Jinping's perspective, or at least it was reported around what China's doing, is China's been preparing for a war. They've been conditioning their market to deal with supply shocks, to deal with shortages, to deal with consumers that are not spending, to deal with the pains of a global world that isn't as efficient as it could be. And for me, that means that, one, you're playing a long game.
Yeah.
And when the dust settles, your economy would have been well prepared to weather the storm. And I don't quite think that the US economy is as prepared. And this now feeds into the conversation you and I had around, does that then mean that by 2035, realistically, China could overtake the US as the biggest power?
I mean, absolutely. It's also, and we've discussed this as well before, that the Chinese populace is better able to take the hardships. Now, not because they're happy about them, but because they don't have a choice. Whereas the American populace will just vote them out. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, but it's that sort of thing. Whereas China, and I know it's a cliche, China thinks long-term, etc., but it's that command economy. It absolutely is. To your point, they've been, preparing for disruptions. I mean, think around the electric vehicle industry, think around their semiconductor industry, their mobile phones and how they've managed all of that. When Google said, we won't stay, China was like, cheers.
Okay.
Like, fine, leave, bye. Facebook, it's like, dude, not here. Instead, we get Tencent with WeChat and the like. And it's not that China's been preparing for a war in the sense that they plan to start one.
No.
But that there are going to be some. And they saw what Trump did in the first term. They saw what Biden did in his term, which was, the only difference between Trump and Biden relative to China was that Biden does it via channels and Trump does it via social media.
Interestingly enough, you brought up the point on the population responding in a certain way. There have already been reports in America that people are protesting, saying Donald Trump must be removed because nobody wants a war. And I think what's interesting about this time around is the market or not even the market, citizens are saying, guys, we don't want our family members being dragged into a war that has nothing to do with us because of whatever relationship you may or may not have with another country. Yeah. There have been posts on X and other socials saying, well, Israel has nuclear weapons. They must fight this war for themselves. Why are they dragging us into this? So there's so much information out there. And I think we're definitely going to get information overload. That's absolutely going to happen. But in a time like this, I think back to a Marvel quote.
Marvel.
The Marvel Cinematic Universe. And this was from King Odin himself. A wise king never seeks out war, but he must always be ready for it. And this is probably going to be one of those wars that shows the world who was ready for what. Strategic alliances are going to be formed, opportunities are going to be out there, and opportunities in the market as well, right? So when you're looking at the gold price, you're looking at the dollar safe haven bet, you're looking at the platinum pricing, every single market, there is opportunity, whether it's to the upside or to the downside. Mm-hmm. Wars bring opportunity for better or worse.
Yeah.
Now, it's unfortunate that opportunity comes at the cost of civilian lives and the lives of people. And if we could, we would have no wars. But the reality is, Jimson over here are not presidents, and we don't have the luxury.
There's
of
always
that.
been, and there always will be, and I mean, absolutely. And also, wars have fundamentally changed. I mean, the Ukrainian war's been like a drone war, which we'd seen bits of drones under Obama in Iraq, Afghanistan, but not to the level. The Iranian war is like there's no boots on the ground as yet. Probably won't be any boots on the ground.
We've got
It's
ballistic
just-
missiles. Why
it's
do I
all
need to
just
send
aerial?
people?
Yeah, no, 100%. But it is. I suppose it's the hardship of it, and that was one of the things which Churchill was always credited with in the Second World War, where he kept the English sort of population on board. They were not happy, but they were
Not happy.
No, but they would go into the bomb shelters. They would send women and children, or certainly women, to the rural areas. They would have no sugar and whatever else, etc., etc. And it is that, and I can't help thinking that in this day and age, that would be a lot harder to sustain. Yeah.
So then, I guess this is the parting thought on these war developments and what's happening is, yes, there's opportunity, but where do you look? So the traditionals are out there, the gold, the oil price moving higher, the logical things are out there. And I kind of feel like we've been seeing that shift for the last couple of weeks since, or at least for the last couple of months since President Trump has taken office, that markets are moving back to traditionals, what we know. We're moving out of things like crypto that are new age trading platform or trading and investment kind of solutions, and we're moving back to when things go down and we have to go back to a barter system, what works and what doesn't. Now, we're not saying that this is the end of things like crypto and all of that, but you're starting to see that shift. Markets inherently are saying, this thing must blow over, and until it does, we're not gonna do anything outrageous.
Yeah, and they are, to be clear. I mean, U.S. markets, they were closed on, when were they closed? Closed on Thursday for Juneteenth.
Yeah.
They slightly red on Friday. Futures are slightly down this morning, but they're just off highs. So where do we go? I have a soft spot for Europe, although Europe has broken my heart so many times. I've had a soft spot and had that soft spot quite severely stabbed by the Europes. But they're kind of, and there's a war in the middle of Europe, but in the sense that they are, aside from the Ukrainian war, they kind of, do they not emerge as the middle ground reasonable people?
How? Because
Well, they're not attacking anyone. It's a good
not
start.
yet. Well, you know how Britain is. They itch to get involved in wars.
Yeah,
They can't sit this one out.
I think Britain's worked out that they're going to get their ass handed to them if they try that.
Yeah, but I mean, they're still going to sit there and say we can do the naval stuff. We can do the on water fighting.
Not in 100 years.
Well,
I mean, when I say that, I mean 100 years ago, maybe, not anymore.
Yeah, not anymore. Yeah, that's fair. But then you've also got Germany that's saying, you know what, we're going to raise up an army again. And we know what happened the last time they did that. We keep avoiding that conversation because nobody actually wants to talk about it.
Yeah, I know. As I said, Europe.
Disappointed you once, disappointed you many a times. But yes, the likes of Switzerland in Europe are a safe bet because in 200 years where we've waged wars, Switzerland has been neutral. Well, neutral in the sense that they'll hide money for the good guys and the bad guys, whoever you feel is the good
neutral.
guy.
But that's interesting because then what about Scandinavian? I have no idea how to invest in Scandinavia.
The Nordic regions.
Yeah.
Look, the Nordic guys have been very much on the...
Spotify comes from there. Apart from that, I know nothing.
But they've been
And
very
fish.
much on the we will do what's good for the population. We will build retirement villages and retirement cities and homes, and we will look after the people and all of that. So I don't see them getting dragged into a war per se.
No, I know, but then how do we invest in them if they're going to be sitting there eating their fish and driving their electric vehicles? How do we invest into it?
Amsterdam Stock Exchange, I guess. Starting point.
So we've got there's an Oslo Stock Exchange and Sweden
Yes.
and Denmark and
Oslo,
Finland.
Norway. Yeah.
So it's mostly, and interestingly, it's mostly oil and gas, Norway. Technology, they've got aquaculture, shipping, consumer goods.
Well, we will ponder on that. We will figure it out. What we will not be doing is we will not be providing you with investment advice or financial advice because that's not what the show does. We're sharing our opinions, we're sharing our thoughts on these things, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on the developments of the Middle East and the global developments in general. Do you think that this war will end anytime soon? Do you think there will be any winners? We know there'll definitely be losers in this war. Do you think it's even necessary? We, for one, hold the view that it was never necessary to begin with. But that's just our view. We're just two guys sitting in a room recording a podcast, right? That's Market Matters. We're going to leave it on that note. We're going to get into the deep dive because we desperately need to talk about puppies. The war talk has all but worn us out. So stick around for that, dropping later in the week. But it's Market Matters.